Hello class, welcome to our presentation on managing software in Ubuntu 2004. Okay, before I can start explaining you how you can install and manage software in your Ubuntu system, I would like to define some basic terminology first. Things um, that you might not be familiar with because in Windows you generally don't need to know these things to install applications. You just double click and blindly trust that whatever you're installing does what it is supposed to do. So let's go with a package, right? So what is a package? A package is an archive that contains binaries of software, configuration file, and information about the dependencies needed for installing a particular software. It is a way of packaging an application, right? In Windows, these are commonly .exe files or what you download from the internet to install your program. As a matter of fact, a .exe file is nothing but a compressed file that contains everything you need. The same concept applies in pretty much every operating system. Um, so whenever you think of a package, think of a box containing every single piece of thing that you need for a particular program. So inside those things, we have libraries, dependencies, and repositories. Now, what is a library? A library is just reusable code that can be used by one or more applications to do a particular task. All operating systems have a menage of libraries that they use, and all programs do as well. What is a dependency then? A dependency is software needed as a foundation for other software. So it's software in which is used to build other software or to run other software. A repository is a collection, or in this case a large collection of software available for download. That's it, simple as that. And that is a word that is going to be very familiar to you as a Linux user. Ubuntu has 4 main repositories from where software can be downloaded and installed: main, universe, restricted, and multiverse. The description for each and every one of them is right over there. Main is canonical supported free and open source software. Universe is community maintained free and open source software. Restricted is proprietary software such as drivers. And multiverse is software restricted by copyright or legal issues. Now, software that has been included in these 4 repositories has been tested to work with your Ubuntu system and not to conflict with other packages that are installed in your system. If you stick to installing software from these 4 repositories, your Ubuntu system has a very low likelihood of breaking due to an update. This software is consistently tested over and over and over as long as you're running an LTS version of Ubuntu. In a non-LTS version of Ubuntu, you might encounter issues because non-LTS versions are used for testing software. Okay, the Debian Package Management System, or DPMS, is the foundation for managing software inside a Debian Linux distribution. Ubuntu is a Debian Linux distribution, it's part of the big Debian family, therefore it uses the DPMS system for managing software. Debian package names are identified by their extension. The extension is .deb or .deb. These type of files are commonly referred as .deb files. At the core of the DPMS is dpkg, or the Debian Package Application, the Debian Package Manager. dpkg works in the back end of the system to directly manipulate, install, and do all the work that wrapper tools do for us. But hey, hold on. Wrapper tools? What is that? Is it like an application that's going to throw some lines? No. A wrapper tool is an application that has been developed to make the management of something else or a more low-level application easier. dpkg is a low-level tool, which means that it doesn't handle dependency. It is harder to use, and it's normally not recommended to use because it is one of those tools that does one thing and it does it very well. It also does a bunch of other things that a newbie or somebody who doesn't know what they're doing very well might use to break their system. So because of this, a wrapper tool is invented to actually make the management of, in this case, applications easier and less likely to break the system. There are several wrapper tools for managing software in an Ubuntu system, in a Debian system, and we're going to go through all of them today. Now, the first one that I would like to go over is APT, and the most common one, and the one that you probably are going to see in certification exams and throughout your career as an Ubuntu Debian user. And if you're running Ubuntu or Debian on the server, the one that you probably are going to use the most to install and remove software. So it is the one that you should pay the most attention to. APT, or Advanced Package Tool, is a set of tools for managing Debian packages. APT handles dependencies in software. But when I say it handles dependencies, you see, that's just fancy wording for it does a ton of things that you normally shouldn't, that in other case you should worry about, but this software eliminates it for you. And what are those things? Well, let's explain it with an example. Imagine that you're installing a big application like LibreOffice or GIMP, or maybe a game like Doom, or Steam, right? Those big applications, they require a ton of software, a ton of other dependencies that, look, the end user, like you'll never know that those dependencies are needed. If it wasn't because of APT, you would have to actually look for those dependencies manually and install them. But APT, when you run the installation command, knows that all of these dependencies are needed, and it simply just goes online to their respective repositories on the internet, get those dependencies, downloads them, installs them, and then continues with the installation. As simple as that. The user doesn't have to worry about it because APT does it for you. Now, APT can do something else as well. It can do something that's called installation resuming. Let's say you're installing an application that's really, really big. It has a ton of dependencies, right? And you went to grab a coffee. There was a problem in your network, right? And for a moment you lost internet connection. That's fine, because when you regain internet connection again, APT can just resume the installation from where it left off without a problem. This is amazing because that means that when you create scripts that automatically download stuff for you, you don't have to worry if you lose internet connection because the script will continue running, once you get the internet connection back. This is great. APT can also search for packages using your local cache. What does that mean? That means that if you are looking for an application, let's say I want to install a video player on my system because I don't have a video player, you can actually look for the video player directly on your terminal window. You don't need to open a web browser to go to some weird website where you might download a software that you don't know if it might work or not. No, APT can simply look for the program or look for a particular word that matches the program you're looking for and return a beautiful list for you to pick from just by you providing what is called search string or a keyword that you're looking for. For instance, hey, I'm looking for chat applications or web browsers or video players or video games. Now, from where does APT get this information from? Well, there is a file in your system called sources.list located in the directory etc/apt, where APT keeps a list of repositories where software can be downloaded from, and that's where the cache is built from. As simple as that. Okay. Now, one more thing that I'd like to mention is when the list of repositories is outdated, APT first need to update that list of repositories, and then it can search or install applications from. When that happens, it might take a little longer for your application to install. Not a lot longer, just a little bit. But when your list of sources is up to date, the installation normally goes pretty quick. Okay, So how do you install, how do you update your system, right? Let's learn a basic command, the most basic of all the apt commands, updating your system. What command are you probably familiar with already? This is how it looks like. Sudo apt update and then sudo apt upgrade. And this is gonna upgrade your Linux system. No need for rebooting, no need for no crazy nonsense, no need for, looking at a system update over and over and over to make sure that it didn't pause. No, none of that. No stopping or restarting, services. None of that Windows nonsense is required over here. Just run this command and the system is updated. Obviously, once the command is done executing. So let's understand this command a little better, right? So the first word, sudo, is a program. And it's a program that is used to give yourself temporary root privileges or temporary super user privileges so that you can run administrative tasks such as updating your system, installing and removing software. In Linux, we have something called the root user, which is the ultimate user in the system that can do anything. There is no restrictions to the root user. You might be the administrator of your system, but you are never the root. The root is a separate user that all Linux distributions have. It is not a good idea to use your system as the root user, because using your system as the root user is like driving a Ferrari with no seatbelt, no wheels, and no steering wheel and no brakes. It is very easy to compromise your system to a point that is unrecoverable because the root user has no restrictions. So because of that, we have something called sudo, a program that allows us to do exactly that. It does more than that, but for the sake of this presentation, let's keep it as simple as possible. Anytime you want to do an administrative tasks, you will need sudo privileges or super user privileges. Now, apt is the wrapper tool or the program that we're going to use to update our system. Update is the apt command that allows us to refresh the list of sources in our system so that we can always download from the right place. It also tells us what software require updating in our system because as it updates the list, it also queries the software that we have installed in our system and compares it with different versions that have been released by applications maintainers. This semicolon over here is amazing. It's one of the things that make Linux so great. This allows us to run multiple commands in a single line. Think of a semicolon as an end of line separator. As long as you put a semicolon in the end, you can run another command and such and such and such. Bash, our shell, will understand that that colon means the end of the first command, which is sudo apt update, and the beginning of another command. Those of you who have taken a couple of programming courses might know the semicolon as an end of line. Those of you who haven't, why don't you wait until you get there and you'll learn more technical information about that. Upgrade is the apt command or the apt option that allows us to install the newer versions of the software that we have installed currently in our system. -y is a flag or another option that allows us to auto answer yes to any yes and no question that the program apt might throw at us. If you run this program without -y, apt will tell you, hey, look, I already took a look at all the programs that you have. This is the size of the new installation that you're going to have. This is the total amount of space that I'm going to consume installing the newer version of the software. And here is a list of all the software that will be upgraded. Do you want to continue, yes or no? If you provide a -yes, it will automatically answer yes and not bother you. But if you don't, it will require that you answer either yes to continue or no to exit. -y is great because a lot of times we want to build the scripts to automate, mundane tasks such as updating our system. With that said, let's move along to how I then can install or remove applications in my Linux box, right? And that's very easy. We use the install option of apt. over here you're gonna see a picture showing you an example of how you can install an application called a screen fetch into your system. As you can see, I start with the word sudo because it requires super user privileges, apt, the program that I'm using, the option which is install, and then the name of the program, which is a screen fetch. If you were to install Firefox, guess what you put there? Firefox, exactly. Now, if you want to remove, all you have to use is use the remove option instead of the install option. Now, there is another thing that apt can do, which is pretty great, and is the ability to install and remove software in a single command. Maybe you want to install Firefox, install Slack, but you want to remove VLC and you want to remove Steam. How can you do that? Well, simple. To the name, add the plus or minus sign, and apt will know that if it sees a plus sign at the end of the name, you want to add the software, meaning you want to install it. And if it sees a minus sign, it means that you want to subtract or delete the software from your system. But I talk a lot. Let's take a look at an actual example of that. So over here in the first example, we see an apt command to install 3 applications in our system: Firefox, Flameshot, and Caffeine, right? And providing the -y flag will allow us to just bypass the yes and no question into a straight yes. The second command, though, remove the exact same applications: Firefox, Flameshot, and Caffeine. Now, the third command over here allows us to install Firefox, remove Flameshot, remove Caffeine, and install VLC. The last one over here allows us to remove files, but at the same time get rid of all the garbage dependencies, all the garbage libraries that were once needed for the installation, but are no longer needed to our system because we no longer have the software installed. Sudo apt purge, like the movie. How do you search for applications then? I show you how to install, I show you how to remove, and how to purge. But how do you search? Simple. Using the keyword search. For instance, if I do apt search web browser, Ubuntu is just gonna throw me a bunch of packages that match the description web browser. Now, notice that I didn't use the keyword sudo in this particular command, and that is because searching for packages is not an administrative task. It doesn't require special privileges to look at the list of packages that are available with a particular keyword. You're not installing or removing anything, therefore you don't need to be an administrator for that. You can also use the apt catch search option, but that has been deprecated in favor of apt search. Okay. Now, more useful options of apt. Okay, so if you want to obtain information about a particular package, we can use the show package option of apt cache, and it will show you more information about a particular package. This is very useful because sometimes you look for a package and you find the name too cryptic, and you're like, what does this do? Well, you can get more information about it by using the apt cache show package command. Right, you can also install packages without upgrading. Why? Just provide the no upgrade feature. You can also upgrade packages. For instance, install Firefox but only do an upgrade. You can also clean your system, and this is a command that I run very freely. I think I run this about once a month. I do an update every week, but I do a clean every month. And this command, notice that this is 3 commands: apt clean, auto clean, and auto remove will get rid of all the garbage files that are used during installation of software that are no longer needed in your system. Attention! apt-get. A lot of times when you're reading tutorials online, especially those of you who are going to be doing more interesting final projects, you're going to find tutorials that are a little bit dated, right? And they might show you something like apt-get install instead of apt install. Now, that's a deprecated feature of apt. It still works, but it's no longer being developed. Instead, we use the following commands. Instead of apt-get, we use apt-install. Instead of apt-get remove, we use apt-remove. And this particular list over here will allow you to translate those -get options to the newer version that we're using now. Okay, now with what you have learned so far, you are capable of installing and removing software with your Linux system with no problem. From this point on, we're going to cover some extra material that is very important for you to know. Let's start with PPAs, or Personal Package Archive. At the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned that Ubuntu has four main repositories: main, universe, restricted, and multiverse. But what if the application that you're installing, it's not in none of them, right? Because Ubuntu hasn't, reviewed the application yet. So they haven't been able to include it there. Or maybe the developer, is not as active in the development of the package, or for whatever other reason, it's just not part of those main repositories. Does that mean that you are stuck with those four options only? No. The Canonical team decided to invent something called PPAs, which allows any developer to just create their own repository for their own application, and if you want to install it, all you have to do is add that repository to your list, and now you have access to the applications that are in that repository. As simple as that. Now, as you can imagine already, there is a risk. I mean, that software isn't clean. That software isn't tested, right? So you need to make sure that you only add PPAs from sources that you trust, that there is a company backing up this software. It's not just random guy on Reddit, making random code. There is somebody actively developing this application. I trust the source. That's something that you need to keep in mind, because using PPAs is not different from installing random exe files in a Windows system. Now, why are PPA created? Well, software developers like to test their applications. So sometimes they have their main application that is released in the regular multiverse repository or in the regular Ubuntu repository, but that is the stable version of the software. The latest version of the software that has the bleeding edge technology that they're working on might be untested, and they decide to package it in a PPA so that some users that are testers of the program can download the latest version and play around with it. Also, keep in mind that PPAs are not guaranteed to be stable, and they're not guaranteed to be tested either. So you're using it at your own risk. Anyone is allowed to create a PPA. There is no review procedure for PPAs. So again, run at your own risk. Okay, how do I add a PPA then? I'm convinced I'm just gonna install the PPA. For instance, Telegram, right? It's a very well-known substitute for WhatsApp. So to add a PPA, you use the command sudo add apt repository, and then you provide the PPA. Then after that, you update the list of softwares in your system, because you have just added a new repository to your list, and it requires an update. And after that, you run the installation of the program. That's it. 3 simple steps. Then how do you remove it? Let's say, okay, I got it. I installed the software, but I no longer want it because I got rid of the software. I no longer need it. How do I delete it? Simple. apt add apt repository, and then you provide the flag or the option -- remove, and then the PPA, and that's it. You can also purge it. Sudo apt install PPA purge, and then PPA purge the particular repository that you want to purge. As simple as that. Okay, let's say that the software that you want to install is not available in the repos, is not available in the main repos, that the developer hasn't provided a PPA, but instead decided to actually package their software as a deb file. How can I install this? Well, apt can install PPAs, no problem. So if you think about that deb files in the same way that you think about exe and Windows, you will be correct, because they're pretty much the same thing, right? Archives of a particular software. In Unix, deb files, or in Linux, deb files are nothing but tar archives, which is a concept we're going to explain more in the future when we deal with the archiving of software and the creation of backups. To install a deb package, you need to download the file first. For instance, you can play around installing Google Chrome, although you can install Google Chromes from the command line or from what is called a snap package now on, which you're going to look at later. But, for the sake of an example, let's go online and download the deb file for Ubuntu, for Chrome, right? You can use dpkg, you can use getdebi, or you can use apt to install the package, whichever of the tools that you prefer. Let's take a look at an example of how we can install using dpkg. Now, simple, again, sudo, because it's an administrative task, dpkg, the option -i for installation, and simply the package. That's it. The actual file that you downloaded. If you run the command the same way that I run it right now, notice that I am currently working in my downloads directory. That's the reason why I didn't provide the actual full path or absolute path of the deb file. Now, getdebi is another program that you can use for installing actual, deb packages. Now, getdebi or gdebi is not installed by default in your system. You need to install it. So you use sudo apt install gdebi -y, and that will install the software. And to install the package using gdebi, just run sudo gdebi and then the package, the actual package you downloaded from the internet. And that's it. That deb file has been downloaded. Now, with Debian packages or that deb package that you get from the internet, you need to be equally sure that, as you are in PPAs, that the source from where you download the package is secure, that it is actually trusted, because again, this is not software that is tested by the Ubuntu team. They cannot guarantee you the security of that particular application that you're installing. In the same way that Microsoft cannot guarantee you that applications you install from the internet are not viruses. They can't guarantee that because they didn't develop the application, neither tested the application. Okay, here is an example of installing gdebi and installing an application with gdebi. You can watch it with your own freedom. Okay. Now you have learned the traditional way of installing and managing applications in Ubuntu. There is a newer way called snaps and a competitor called Flatpack. These are newer ways of installing software that make installation of software even easier. However, there is a lot of controversy behind these two methods of installing applications, which I'm not going to go into in this video. I don't think those controversies are relevant for people that are new to using Linux. But as you go older, as you install more, as you use the system more, you might hear a lot of criticism of these two new methods of installation. Mostly because they are new, but also because they introduce new philosophies to the Linux ecosystem that traditional Linux users might not agree with. Now, I'm more concerned about teaching you how to use it than the controversy or politics behind it. So why don't we just do exactly that? So snaps are app packages for desktop, cloud, and the Internet of Things that are easy to install, secure, cross-platform, and dependency-free. Because literally it's the program with everything that you need for the program, and that's it. That's it. They are self-contained, which means that they run on their own ecosystem, on their own little bubble. Right? Which is one of the things that make them secure, the fact that they are self-contained applications, right? So, snap is both the command line interface that we use for installing application and the package format. Snapd is the service that literally is required for running snaps. Snapcraft is the command and the framework used for building your own application if you are a developer and you want to package your app as a snap. The Snap Store is the place where you upload your snaps. That's the common terminology. Snaps offer a manual and automatic updates cycle, meaning your program can be updated automatically if you so desire, or you can set it to manual if you don't desire to do automatic updates. You can save, backup, and restore the state of any snaps that you have installed in your system. These are features that are not available when you use traditional methods such as apt. You can install more than one version of the same snap in your system, which again is not something that you can do with apt. Snapcraft offers an app store, and you can go to snapcraft.io/store to take a look if you so desire. Here are the commands that you use for managing snaps. If you want to search for snaps, you can use a particular search string like we did with apt. If you want to install a snap, you can do sudo snap install vlc. If you want to check what programs are installed in your system, you can do a snap list. If you want to update using a snap, you simply do sudo snap refresh, and all the snap packages are going to be installed in your system. Now it is important that I mention something. Remember in the beginning of the video when I said when you use apt update, it updates your entire system? If you have a program installed using a snap, apt is not going to be able to update that particular software. So that's something you need to keep in mind. Now, newer versions of Ubuntu prefer snaps over apt. So if a particular software has been already packaged as a snap, apt will automatically call a snap and install the snap version of the software instead of the traditional version of the software. This is something that gave a lot of criticism to Ubuntu 2004 because a lot of people don't like snaps. A lot of people prefer to manage software the old way. So again, if you look the controversies behind the snap, that's going to be the main criticism that you find, especially in the YouTube community, where majority of Linux users like to voice their opinion. I particularly don't care. I just want to use my system. But a lot of people do care. You can also update, sorry, we already talked about that. You can also remove a snap using sudo snap remove and then the name of the package. I gave you an example right there. And I know a lot of people are going to hate me for saying that I don't particularly care about snaps, but hey, to each his own. Also, we have Flatpack. Flatpack is a competitor to Snap. It's again a self-contained environment for applications. First, you need to install Flatpak if you're going to use it in Ubuntu because it's not available by default. To install it, all you have to do is follow these steps over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're done. After you install Flatpak, you do need to restart your system, which is a drawback, but hey, not everything is perfect. Here is the same thing that I talk about in Snaps, but using Flatpak instead. If you want to search for a Flatpak, Flatpak search video. If you want to install Flatpak, Flatpak install VLC, and so on and so forth. Now, in the Linux world, again, a little bit of politics. There is a big divide. People who support Flatpak and people who support Snap. Because we all agree in one thing. The old version of installing software is a little bit cumbersome, right? The people who install Flatpak has their own, they use Flatpak has their reason why they prefer it. And the people who use snaps, they have their reasons to support the snaps. I like them both. I use them both. I want software availability because I want to have as many software available in my system as I possibly can. I am focused on getting the job done. I'm not interested in the politics behind it. They can just keep their politics to themselves. Again, this is how you do it with the snaps, with Flatpaks. In the other slide, you have how you do it with snaps. In this course in particular, we are not going to focus on snaps or Flatpak. We're going to mostly use apt. And if I were to summarize what you need to learn, just know how to install, remove, and update. Install and remove software and how to update your system. Those are the basics. Once you master that, the rest will come as you use your system. Now, you can also install software in Linux using the graphical user interface. Of course, that's the boring way. That's the noob way. And how do you do it? Well, with the usage of app stores. And yes, Linux came up with the concept of app store way before Mac or Windows even thought of the idea. We've been having app stores for way too long now. I personally don't install applications using the app store, but hey, if you want, by all means, go ahead. It's not very different from any other app store that you have used in the future, in the past. Literally just search for the app and click on install and then click on launch and you're good to go. I mean, this is as user-friendly as you can possibly get. You can also install packages using a graphical version of GDebi, and it is the same way as you do it in Windows. Just go to the folder where you have the package and double click on it, and that's it. And well, when you double click on it, if it's the first time, it would probably open with your package manager. So actually with the software center, but you can just do open with and open it with GetEvi, and here's a video. I don't need to go on it. Just watch the particular image and you're good to go. Again, I don't install applications graphically because I personally feel that it takes longer. I just like to do it in the command line because it's faster and I can look at what the system is doing. And on top of everything, in a server environment, you don't have a graphical interface and you're gonna be getting paid to work on servers, so you might as well get used to the command line instead of this flashy, graphical interface thingy. Okay, so let's talk about something else. Another graphical tool for installing packages, and this one is actually very, very useful, is Synaptic. Synaptic is a front end for apt, so it's a graphical version of apt, and it's as powerful as apt. That's why it's not very user-friendly, because it's very, very powerful. Synaptic can install, remove, configure, upgrade software packages, browse, search, cert. It can do a ton of things. It's very, very useful. Synaptic can queue up a number of actions, meaning you can, okay, I'm going to install this package, then I'm going to install this other package, then this other package, and I'm going to remove that other package. And you can queue all those actions one after each other with Synaptic, which is pretty cool for a graphical tool. Synaptic will inform you of dependencies that are needed when you actually try to install a particular software, which is also, again, very, very cool. Synaptic is powerful. It's a very powerful gun, so make sure that you load it and use it properly. How to use Synaptic? Well, install it first. How do you install it? It's a given at this point. Sources and reference. Please thank these people for this presentation, not me. I'm only the guy that reads it and make it user-friendly, or as user-friendly as I possibly can. These people are the real genius behind all of this information I just fed you. I apologize for the length of this video. You guys have a great rest of the day.